beat him, Trump, 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 Trump. Donald Trump is dangerous, but as horrible and grotesque as he is, Donald Trump is not as dangerous as this guy, Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis just reelected as the 46th governor of Florida. That's right. He won by a landslide. He, before being governor, was a congressman representing Florida's 6th congressional district. He has a degree from Yale, graduated magna cum laude, and then from Yale he went off to Harvard Law School and got a Harvard law degree. While attending Harvard, he enlisted and served in the Iraq War. He rose to lieutenant commander and received a Bronze Star. While serving as a JAG officer in the Navy, he was stationed both in Iraq. He didn't see any fighting. He was a JAG officer. And then he got stationed in Guantanamo Bay. Ron DeSantis had a job as a JAG officer in Guantanamo Bay to guarantee detainees were given and read their rights under the Geneva Conventions. While he was in Gitmo, our military worked with the CIA to waterboard and torture those very same detainees in direct violation of those very same Geneva Conventions that Ron DeSantis was to make sure were obeyed. Ron DeSantis, age 44, still married to the same woman, and has 3 daughters. With the Republican New Hampshire primary less than a year away, a new University of New Hampshire poll shows Ron DeSantis leading Donald Trump in New Hampshire by 12 points. But every single national poll shows Trump leading DeSantis by anywhere between 5 to 26 points. It's Trump versus DeSantis. Nobody else comes close. Not Haley, not Nikki Haley, not Mike Pence. It's Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump. And while nationally Trump leads DeSantis by a large margin, there is a distinct possibility that once states like Ohio and South Carolina and New Hampshire start vetting DeSantis in the primaries, and depending on how DeSantis holds up during the debates, that could be interesting, Ron DeSantis could find a pathway to the nomination. And I fear, I'd like to know what you think and fear, I think somehow, if somehow he gets the nomination and he gets elected, Ron DeSantis would be far more dangerous than Donald Trump, because Ron DeSantis is not a clown. What do you think? What would you rather see? Biden running against DeSantis or Trump? Well, I'd rather see Bernie running against DeSantis and Trump. Not sure that's going to happen. So what would you like to see? Who would you like to see as the Republican nominee? Who do you think will be easier to beat, Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis? Who do you think is a bigger threat to our democracy if elected, Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis? On today's show, I'm going to propose that I think Donald Trump is the devil we know, and that Ron DeSantis might be a bigger threat to democracy. Ron DeSantis can be a much bigger threat to democracy than Donald Trump. Not sure. Would love to know what you think, so leave a comment in the comment section down below. My regular listeners know that I read all the comments. I don't respond to all of them, but I do read all the comments, and I do issue corrections. If you correct me, I will issue corrections in the description, and I appreciate some of the information you've been sending me via comments. I didn't know how Elmer Stewart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, lost his eye. So thank you to one of the listeners who left that in the comment section down below. Please join the conversation. Ron DeSantis, Governor Ron DeSantis, says Florida is where woke goes to die. It's also where your grandparents go to die. And ever since Ron DeSantis took charge, it's where democracy, your civil liberties, and your freedom of speech also go to die. DeSantis hates woke because he loves free speech, unless your free speech includes writing books that tell the story of how America destroyed vast populations of indigenous people or uprooted Africans, brought them here to America in chains, raped, murdered, and then separated mothers from children, separated fathers from children, all in the name of free labor. DeSantis, no fan of free speech when it comes to teaching America's real history or writing about it. DeSantis says he hates the cancel culture, even though he is canceling the LGBTQ as well as the African American cultures. And if you're a teacher who goes on social media to prove that Governor Free Speech, Ron DeSantis, is banning books, for example, about baseball great Roberto Clemente, and then while you're on social media, you show a video of Florida public school library shelves completely empty because of all the books about race and sexuality that Governor Free Speech has banned, then you get canceled. Yes, Governor DeSantis, Florida certainly is where woke goes to die. Ron DeSantis is so anti-woke, if you disagree with him, he will put you to sleep. You will never wake up again. That's how anti-woke Ron DeSantis is. This is from the New Civil Rights Movement, February 17th, 2023. A teacher in Florida has just been fired for videotaping an empty Florida school library. Brian Covey, a substitute teacher, was just fired in Florida for posting a video. Last month, it went viral because it exposed the degree of censorship Governor Free Speech Ron DeSantis is willing to exert. And so this teacher was fired by Ron DeSantis because Ron DeSantis unilaterally ruled that this teacher's video provided a false narrative on Ron DeSantis's efforts to censor teachers. How dare you prove that I am censoring you? You're now censored for claiming that I'm censoring you. The governor is waging war against critical race theory and human sexuality getting taught in Florida's schools. And yet, Mr. Free Speech is censoring. He's, says he's free for free speech, right? But he's censoring the books and the teachers he don't like, because nothing screams First Amendment more than the governor of a state ordering people, don't teach race, don't say gay, don't write this, ban this book, and fire that teacher. Wow, somebody give this guy an ACLU Man of the Year award. If you talk to DeSantis supporters, all they complain about is how the cancel culture is trampling upon their First Amendment rights, how our side is against free speech. Yes, Ron DeSantis is a free speech absolutist. And by that, he means there's absolutely no free speech unless it's pre-authorized by me. Now, Republicans get all hot and bothered when you call this fascism or totalitarianism. They hate that. But it's exactly what it is. Republicans will insist we hate government. So how can we be totalitarians? We hate government. How can we be fascists? Because Republicans are lying when they say that. Republicans love government so long as government protects the very wealthy and keeps the rest of us frightened, divided, and down. Republicans love big government so long as your tax dollars get transferred to them. And if you're Disney and you challenge Ron DeSantis's Don't Say Gay bill, then Florida Republicans, those champions of big business working to remove the shackles from capitalism and unleash the animal spirits, the free market party, the Wall Street supplicants, Republicans who are all about deregulation, all about making the IRS small enough for the richest 1% to drown in their jacuzzi, the party that says get the government out of the way and give corporations all the autonomy they need to fulfill Milton Friedman's utopian wet dream of no EPA or OSHA. Well, if you're Disney and you question Ron DeSantis's culture wars, then that party will strip you of all your autonomy. Disney World, Florida's largest employer, is paying a price for speaking out against Ron DeSantis's policy of refusing to recognize the rights of transgender and other LGBTQ students. DeSantis has thrown out all his alleged free market principles to punish Disney for responding to the free marketplace of ideas. You see, corporations are being held accountable for doing business in states that pass laws punishing transgender students, right? Georgia was punished when it passed these draconian voter ID laws before the midterms that made it harder for people of color to vote. The All-Star game was moved, remember? And that's a good thing. Delta was forced to speak out against Georgia's draconian voting laws that punish people of color, because my First Amendment rights allow me to say, for example, do not buy this product because it's made in a state like Florida that is driving members of the LGBTQ community to suicide, right? But DeSantis, the governor of Florida, wants to put an end to all that. He doesn't want a free marketplace of ideas. He doesn't want American consumers having a voice in what television shows or politicians, corporations sponsor, right? If you sponsor Tucker Carlson, if you donate to, say, Donald Trump, I have the right to say, don't use any product that supports Tucker Carlson or Donald Trump. That's democracy. That's freedom of speech. That's voting with your wallet. But Ron DeSantis doesn't want this kind of democracy. He doesn't want any democracy at all. Ron DeSantis wants all of us to be obedient consumers who keep our mouths shut and do what we're told and sold. He's locking up. He's no fan of democracy. Besides going after Disney, he's locking up ex-felons who were told they could vote, and then when they went and registered to vote, he had them arrested. See, there was a vote, a referendum that was passed a couple of years ago in Florida that gave the right to ex-felons, but Republicans don't want ex-felons voting, so they work around it. They take the will of the people. Florida, the voters said, no, let ex-felons vote. Republicans squash that by adding layer upon layer of bureaucracy. The one thing they hate, red tape, Republicans created all this red tape, making it impossible for ex-felons, a lot of people of color, making it harder for them to vote. And then they were tricked. DeSantis's government sent out cards telling ex-felons who tended to be African American, hey, come register to vote. And then when they registered to vote, they were arrested. All those cases are being thrown out. But have you ever been arrested? Have you ever spent a night in jail? It chills the vote. Just the threat of being arrested chills ex-felons from thinking about voting. DeSantis doesn't stop with the voter ID laws. He has disenfranchised people of color, people who have been arrested. He disenfranchises them by raising the specter of getting arrested once again, right? Nobody wants to get arrested, and certainly nobody wants to get arrested again. It's terrifying and expensive. And now with Disney, DeSantis is sending a signal to corporate America. Don't you dare respond to the woke mob who threaten not to buy your products unless you show proof of corporate responsibility to the community, right? That's the signal he's sending to Disney. That's why DeSantis is going after Disney. He's telling Wall Street and corporate America, do not give a voice to consumers. If you allow Americans to vote with their wallet by threatening, if you allow us to threaten to stop using these products unless these corporations take a stand against bigotry, if you give in to those pressures, Florida will bite back. Because this is all about picking on the transgender community and silencing the consumer, making sure there is less democracy. It's about silencing the voter. It's silencing the masses. It is fascism. Yes, fascists are put into power by the capitalists. But once they gain that power, they use it to play favorites. Under Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, some corporations did better than others. Donald Trump, fascist, punished Amazon and CNN while helping their competitors. And I'll be talking about that next week. This is all from the fascist playbook. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Who do you think is more dangerous, Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis? Now, Ron DeSantis, like all Republicans, right, he claims he's big on free speech, unless you're a government employee who questions him. A government employee like Rebecca Jones, who tried to expose DeSantis's lies, who tried to reveal how DeSantis actually bungled Florida's early COVID response. Do not challenge Ron DeSantis's authority. You will pay a huge price. Rebecca Jones was a Florida data manager. She worked for the state right when COVID hit back in 2020. Rebecca suspected Ron DeSantis had been fudging the numbers, and she set out to prove it, while encouraging other state employees to act as whistleblowers. In the end, DeSantis fired her for making public statements without his permission. That would be Ron DeSantis, governor of free speech, Ron DeSantis forbidding state employees from talking with reporters without his prior authorization. Move over, Julian Assange. There's a new champion of the First Amendment in town, and his name is Ron DeSantis. In December of 2022, Rebecca Jones was coerced, to plead guilty to illegally accessing the state's computer system. She paid a $20,000 fine and agreed to perform 150 hours of community service. The DeSantis attack machine tried to drag her reputation through the mud, but he couldn't stop Forbes magazine from naming Rebecca one of 2020's technology innovators of the year. Here is video from December 7th, 2020, while Forbes was naming Rebecca one of 2020's Technology Innovators of the Year, acting as a whistleblower to expose how DeSantis was fudging the COVID numbers. The police came to arrest her. Here is video from December 7th, 2020. It's a Florida police coming to arrest Rebecca Jones. This is life in Florida under Governor Ron DeSantis. This is what happens when a government employee challenges Ron DeSantis' narrative of what the truth is about COVID. This is not democracy. Republicans always complain about big, bad government, right? Well, this is their version of government. Rule by fiat. The guy at the top, Ron DeSantis, says this is the truth about the COVID numbers. And if anybody working for me disagrees, this is what happens. This is DeSantis government with guns drawn.
Come outside. Outside.
Who else is in the house, ma'am?
My 2 children and my husband.
Where's your husband at?
Calm down. Calm down.
You want the children down?
Call them all down.
Mr. Jones, come down the stairs. Now!
Police, come down now.
Search warrant.
Bring your
Come down the
children.
stairs.
My children!
Hang on, let me clear
He
behind you.
just pointed a gun at my children!
He just pointed a gun at my children. Florida police, acting on orders from Governor Ron DeSantis, pointed their guns at Rebecca Jones' 2 small children. Have you ever had a gun pointed at you? Have you ever had a gun pointed at you? Have you ever had a gun pointed at you by a police officer when you were a kid? Have you ever had a gun pointed at you by a police officer while you were a kid and that police officer takes your mother away? Has that ever happened to you? This is the pro-life party. The children are sacred. Florida police, acting on orders from Governor Ron DeSantis, pointing their guns at Rebecca Jones's 2 small children. Ron DeSantis isn't about freedom of speech. He is about chilling dissent. And the most effective way to chill dissent is to give everyone the right to own a gun. Okay? Now listen to me. DeSantis knows. I'm going to talk about guns for a second, because Ron DeSantis is going to be the pro-gun candidate. I'll talk about that in a few seconds. But Ron DeSantis is running as the ultimate pro-gun candidate. And here is why. He's a fascist. Now listen to me. DeSantis is all about the Second Amendment because he knows that only a certain type will walk around Florida carrying a weapon, and it isn't a Democrat. Okay? Democrats believe in gun control. We believe, for the most part, that it is the job of the government and the police and the judges to deal with criminals. It's not the job of individuals to deal with criminals. It's the job of a good government, good police. That's what Democrats believe. We believe that when ordinary citizens carry weapons, it endangers everyone, including, now pay attention to me on this, it endangers everyone, especially the police. Let me repeat. When you allow everyone to carry a gun, it endangers everybody's lives, including the police. It's why the police, when they raided Rebecca Jones's home, they had their guns out. It's why they pointed guns at her small children, because the police are terrified. They have no idea who is carrying a weapon. And this is exactly what fascists like Ron DeSantis want. They want the police trigger happy. This places civilization at risk. Now listen to me. civilized people only want the police to be armed. Civilized people don't want everybody armed. They only want the government armed. Here's the problem. This is how Republicans succeed in getting people to vote against their own interests. The police are terrified of getting shot, right? But Republicans get them to vote against their own interests. According to a recent study out of Princeton, police, for the most part, vote Republican. This is how Republicans succeed in getting people to vote against their own best interests. The Republicans are an extension of the National Rifle Association, which is a mouthpiece for the gun industry. So it is Republicans who are getting assault weapons into the marketplace. It is Republicans who want everyone to buy guns. Police are terrified of being shot to death, and yet Republicans convince them to vote against their own physical safety. They get them to vote against their own safety, and it's getting worse. Cops are more terrified than ever. You saw what happened in Uvalde, how many cops stood around too afraid to go in there. They're too terrified to do their job. And there's only one reason cops are too terrified to do their jobs. It's because of the guns. It's too dangerous out there because of the guns. When a cop pulls someone over, that cop is terrified of getting shot. It's getting worse because more and more Americans are armed, thanks to the Republicans, thanks to the NRA, thanks to Ron DeSantis, who want everyone carrying guns. Democrats don't want that. Republicans do, and yet cops vote for Republicans. Why? Why do cops vote for Republicans, even though Republicans are facilitating the sale of the very thing that gets them killed, that ruins their job? Why do cops vote Republicans? Why do cops vote against their own safety? Because Republicans support the cops when cops shoot unarmed citizens, right? Republicans have your back if you're a cop and you're trigger happy. Republicans won't hold cops accountable for cops shooting unarmed civilians. That's why cops vote for Republicans. This is insanity. It's the end of democracy. Guns are the end of democracy and the pathway to fascism. We have a serious problem here. We have a problem because of guns, and only because of guns. Nobody wants to be a cop anymore, at least nobody who's somewhat rational, sane, and mentally balanced. Nobody wants to be a cop anymore. I'm putting up these headlines. New York Times, applications fall, police departments lure recruits with bonuses and attention. AP, overwhelmed cops, combat violence, crime as ranks dwindle. London Breed in San Francisco asks for $28 million amid severe San Francisco police shortage. Axios reports police departments all over America are struggling with staffing shortages. Why? Because of guns. We have a shortage of cops in America. Philadelphia, New York, San Francisco, Oregon, they can't find people who want to be cops. Why? Because nobody in his or her right mind wants to patrol the streets knowing everyone has a gun. Which means if we don't institute an assault weapons ban today, If we don't do something about the guns today, the police are going to look exactly like today's Republican Party. If we do not do something about the guns, all that will be left are the crazies. All that will be left in our police departments are the trigger-happy crazies. And that's what happened to the Republican Party. The crazies took over. There are no rational actors left in the Republican Party. It's too dangerous for them. It's getting too dangerous to be a cop, and it's getting too dangerous to be a rational Republican. When you interview all the Republicans who've left Washington since Trump rose to power, they all say it's because it was physically dangerous. It was dangerous for their family. It was dangerous for them. And this is what all these guns are now doing to our law enforcement. If we continue to pour more assault weapons into the street, only crazy people will want to be cops, the same way only crazy people want to be Republican politicians. And they are crazy. These Republican politicians are crazy. We have to get rid of these guns because there are plenty of sadists, plenty of trigger-happy psychopaths who would love to wear a badge and get paid to start shooting at the quote-unquote bad guys. Again, we already have a problem of cops voting for Republicans. They can't do the math on why they're so miserable at their job, so they vote Republican. We already have a problem of some cops, some siding with insurrectionists on January 6th. The more dangerous guns make it to be a cop, the only ones who will want to be a cop will be the fascists. And that is precisely what people like Ron DeSantis want. They want more guns, more terrified police officers, more trigger-happy men and women on patrol, more guns, more extrajudicial brown shirts taking the law into their own hands. More guns mean a trigger-happy police force pointing guns at children like we just saw in that video. It's precisely what Republicans like Ron DeSantis want. I want you to listen to me now, please. Let's think about guns for a second, okay? I know some friends who own guns, who are liberals and lefties. I get that. But who do you think stockpiles guns? Who do you think fetishizes guns? Not doctors, not lawyers, not teachers, intellectuals, not ministers or children of the Enlightenment. They might own, like I said, one gun, but they don't worship it the way Ron DeSantis does. Because, now listen to me, there are only so many hours in the day. Why would a child of the Enlightenment, somebody who believes in democracy, why would a child of the Enlightenment waste any of those hours learning how to use a gun, how to clean it, how to fire it, how to, go into target practice? Why would you do that when you can read, relax, or go for a walk? There is only a certain type of human who wants a gun, who worships a gun, who stockpiles AR-15s. Owning a gun is a major time suck. I'd rather have sex. I'd rather spend whatever time I have having sex than playing with a gun. These macho, they think they're macho, these guys with their weapon, they are signaling to children of the Enlightenment that they are half men. When you celebrate your AR-15, you are signaling to the rest of us that you are half a man. I see a guy with a gun. I see an involuntary celibate. There is nothing masculine about needing a weapon. When I want to feel powerful, I do Wordle. And that makes me superior and better than people who spend time at the gun range. I'm higher up on the evolutionary ladder because I choose Wordle over guns. People who worship and celebrate guns are diseased. They are of feeble mind, body, and soul. And they all found their way into the Republican Party. And if we don't put an end to this fetishization of guns, if we don't ban assault weapons and get guns off the street, these subhuman, flaccid souls will find their way into local law enforcement and be the only ones left in local law enforcement. And then it's over. And then it is over. And that's precisely what Ron DeSantis's plans are, for it to be over. When this happens, it'll just be local police forces acting like gangs. Some already do, but this will be writ large. Local police forces acting like gangs, controlling the politicians and the citizens instead of the citizens and the politicians controlling the police. This is what happens in third world countries. When you make guns available to everyone, either legally or illegally, doesn't matter what the laws are, when you make guns available to everyone, the only ones who stockpile those guns are the enemies of democracy. The only people who stockpile guns are the enemies of democracy. You don't buy an AR-15. You don't buy 5 AR-15s. You don't buy 15 AR-15s because you have a sense of civic responsibility. And Ron DeSantis knows this, which is why DeSantis, if he does run for president, according to Bloomberg, Ron DeSantis will be all in on guns. He is running as the gun candidate, according to Bloomberg. Now, as I talk about in this week's newsletter, which you should sign up for, please go to my website to sign up for my newsletter. It comes out every Friday. As I talk about in this week's newsletter, states with the laxest gun laws have the highest gun mortality rates. That's according to the CDC, and that's not subject to debate. You cannot debate that. This is a fact. States with the laxest gun laws have the highest gun mortality rates. More guns mean more people dying from guns. Them the facts, okay? But facts don't matter. DeSantis is weighing a presidential run and is reportedly going all in as the pro-gun candidate. That's according to Bloomberg, which is reporting that DeSantis is behind legislation now that would allow Floridians, of all people, Floridians, to carry concealed weapons without a permit. When I think of any state that should allow its citizens to carry concealed weapons without a permit, the first people I think of are Floridians. That's what I always think. If only people in Florida could carry concealed weapons without a permit. This is from the Washington Post. This is a legitimate source. I'm going to go full screen here if I can. I hope you can hear me. This is from the Washington Post. A permitless carry law will likely make things worse. One analysis found that gun homicides increased by 22% on average in the 3 years after states passed such a measure. A separate study found that permitless carry led to a 13% increase in shootings by police. It goes on to say, perhaps explaining why law enforcement organizations have been some of the most vocal opponents of permitless carry where it is proposed. Really, that's according to the Washington Post. I haven't really heard from the mainstream media the number of law enforcement officers who are against permitless carry. I would like to see more reporting on that, especially since permitless carry laws lead to a 13% increase in trigger-happy cops. This is Florida, which has been on the forefront of making it easier to not just buy a gun, but to use one as well. Their stand your ground laws allow you, if you're in Florida, to kill someone with a gun on the street. You don't have to do it to claiming that you were afraid you were going to be killed. You can just use the gun and kill someone just because you felt you were being physically threatened. Not if you feel like your life was in danger, just if you simply felt physically threatened, feel free to shoot and kill somebody on the street and stand your ground. Florida has no universal background checks on gun purchases. Anyone in Florida can buy a gun. Isn't that great? And it allows people in Florida with a permit right now, DeSantis wants to change that, it allows people with a permit to walk around carrying a concealed weapon. As I just said, DeSantis wants you to be able to do this without a permit, even though all evidence points to concealed carry without a permit resulting in an increase in gun homicides. Ron DeSantis, despite all the evidence to the contrary, Ron DeSantis maintains that gun control laws don't prevent homicides. What does it matter? What does the truth matter? The Washington Post reports that DeSantis thinks, and again, I wish I was making this up, which is probably what I think this show should be called. The Washington Post reports that Ron DeSantis thinks Florida erred back in 2018 when, after the Parkland shootings, remember that? When after the Parkland shootings, Florida passed laws instituting a 3-day waiting period before purchasing a gun, raising the age of gun ownership to 21, and banning the sale of bump stocks. Remember the shooter in Vegas? He was using bump stocks. Ron DeSantis thinks we should go back to pre-Parkland, Florida shooting laws. He is Mr. Gun. He loves his guns. Yes, he does. Ron DeSantis loves his guns, and he's going to be running on guns. But deep down, he knows guns make us less safe. He knows that. From the Washington Post on February 10th, 2023, get a load of this. Headline, February 10th, 2023. Headline, DeSantis wanted to ban guns at event, but not to be blamed. Emails show. What event could that be? Ron DeSantis wanted to ban guns at an event, but he didn't want to be blamed, according to new emails. It turns out, on Election Day last November, Ron DeSantis didn't want people bringing their weapons to his victory party. Mr. Pro-Gun, the candidate who was all in on everyone carrying guns, He wants everyone carrying guns. He just doesn't want anyone carrying a gun around him. All the local police at his disposal, round-the-clock protection that Ron DeSantis has, the bodyguards that he has, and yet he's smart enough to know, ban guns at my victory party. Right? This is from the Washington Post. I'll go full screen here, I hope. This is from the Washington Post. As Ron DeSantis prepared for an election night party in downtown Tampa last year, city officials received a surprising and politically sensitive request. A politically sensitive request. The Republican governor's campaign wanted weapons banned from his victory celebration at the city-run Tampa Convention Center, a city official said in emails obtained by the Washington Post. And DeSantis' campaign asked that the city take responsibility for the firearms ban, the official said, not the governor, because the governor is a big supporter of gun rights. Right? Big supporter of gun rights. So how would it look if the guy who's going to be running for president as Mr. 2A, he's 2A, Mr. Big Second Amendment, I just don't want the guns around me. Everybody else's life should be in danger, but not mine. Ron DeSantis is a coward. Unfortunately, he also served in our military, but not really. He was a JAG officer. He was a JAG-officer. Ron DeSantis was a JAG-officer, which means he had his Harvard Law degree and he wasn't going to see any real action. He was in Iraq. Thank you for your service. But he's still chicken shit. But he can run on his military record as a JAG officer, even though he didn't see any action. The only action Ron DeSantis saw was at Gitmo watching the CIA waterboard the detainees and not do anything about it. Mr. JAG officer. Gee, I wonder if he met anybody from the CIA down at Gitmo who helped facilitate his political career as a graduate of Yale and Harvard Law. He is dangerous. Ron DeSantis is a much bigger threat to our democracy than Donald Trump because he served in our military, sort of, kind of. What do you think? Do you think JAG officers are the same as battle-tested soldiers? Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments section. I think graduates of Harvard Law School who go off to Iraq, like Ron DeSantis, and serve as JAG officers, he got a Bronze Star. I'd like to know if his life was as in danger as Pat Tillman's, as soldiers who go out on patrol. Maybe I'm wrong. And if so, I will apologize. But right now, I think Ron DeSantis is chicken shit. I think he only served in the military when he knew it was safe to go to Iraq with a Harvard Law degree and serve as a JAG officer in the Green Zone. But he'll run as a decorated veteran. And that's why this chicken shit blowhard is so dangerous to our democracy. I fear that he may actually be more dangerous than Donald Trump. Now, yes, Donald Trump was a threat to American democracy. The insurrection on January 6th was real. But Trump is a buffoon. He had to go extrajudicial to try to overthrow our government because nobody in the military, the Justice Department, or the FBI would join him. Our system on January 6th, for better or worse, held the line against Donald Trump because Trump wasn't one of them. He wasn't part of the system. January 6th failed because Trump had to go outside the government. The Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, they're not part of our government. January 6th was doomed from the start. Unlike DeSantis, Donald Trump never learned how the levers of government power actually work. Donald Trump, unlike Ron DeSantis, never learned how to create the singularity between government and corporate America. He never learned how to create the singularity between government and corporate America, which is the definition of fascism. The problem with Ron DeSantis is, like Franco, like Mussolini, like Hitler, Ron DeSantis served in the military. DeSantis served in the military. He served in Congress, and he's a governor. He knows how to use power. He is an American Caesar who will cross the Rubicon and is just craven enough to accept the crown. Now, I want Trump and his family locked away for life. I do, right now. And I'm willing to risk DeSantis becoming the front runner. But there is the law of unintended consequences, one of which would be President Ron DeSantis. I don't know anything. But to those of you who think Ron DeSantis is better than Trump, allow me to paraphrase Shakespeare's Marillus, who warns the Roman plebeians as they fall prey to Caesar's charms. You blocks, you stones, you worse than senseless things. Oh, you hard hearts, you cruel men of Rome, knew you not the Donald? He will be worse than Pompey, Ron DeSantis. I may be wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed this segment of The David Feldman Show, please subscribe to it. And I have no corporate backing. I don't have a 501c3. This is a small little podcast, a lonely voice in the internet wilderness. Whoever is listening to me right now is doing so because somebody shared this with them. Nobody's promoting me. So I have to ask you, if you want to help me, the best way to help me if you enjoyed this is to copy and paste the link to this episode. If you're listening to it as a podcast or watching it as a video, please copy and paste the link and share it with your friends via social media or email. That is the best way to thank me for the work that I'm doing here. And please hit the like button, and please leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me be very clear here about the community that we're creating. There are strict guidelines in order to leave a comment wherever you're listening or hearing this. Some things are non-negotiable. You'll see the guidelines. I'm not interested in certain types of people commenting. So the community is growing, and it's a collection of really smart, passionate, and informed listeners. And I read all your comments. You'll know that I read your comment if there's a heart next to it. I try to respond to all of them. I can't. There just aren't enough hours in the day, but I'm reading all your comments, and I thank you for those comments. If you'll notice, I issued a correction on the last episode. I got 2 things wrong, and so if you go back and see the description on my last show, I issued 2 corrections. I do issue corrections. If you fact check me and I get something wrong, I will correct it in the description of that episode. So thank you to the people who correct me. And thank you to the people who share articles and links. And thank you to people who agree with me, disagree with me, or just want to tell me they enjoyed the show. I'm in a vacuum here, so I appreciate what everyone has to say. So thank you for that. We do office hours every Friday night. The way to get a link to it is by going to my website. You need a phone or Zoom. You can dial into office hours. Please subscribe to my newsletter. If you subscribe to my newsletter, it includes an office hours link. And there's a community of like-minded, respectful citizens of the world who believe in peaceful dialogue, children of the Enlightenment, and I think you'll find new friends and better people. So please check out office hours by going to my website and getting the link. It starts at 6 p.m. Eastern on Friday night. I'm there for the first 10 minutes from 6 to about 6:10. And then at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host for about 90 minutes. And you can talk to me about whatever you want. If you have questions, criticisms, if you want me to know something, that's when I make myself available to the listeners from 8 to about 9:30 every Friday night Eastern. It's through Zoom. Get the link. You can actually dial in if you don't know how to work Zoom. Please join this community. My friend got the medication. Thank you to all the people who wrote to me about that. My friend now has the medication, and it might actually get better moving forward. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak.